Good to have you join us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele. The renewed hope mantra of the present administration started on the trajectory of revitalizing the nation's economy and enhancing citizens' welfare through diverse policies, structured around 8 key priority areas spanning from economic reform, national security, food security, energy and natural resources, infrastructure, social investment. Now, the landmark policies that was eventually birthed sought to be the game changer by flipping old narratives that has kept the nation on a standstill. From the removal of fuel subsidy, stabilizing the naira, decentralize the power and governance sectors, harmonization of foreign exchange rates, the introduction of NEL Fund, CNG initiative, improved workers' welfare and infrastructure expansion. No doubt, this administration has demonstrated readiness and commitment to put the nation on a path of prosperity. But beyond these reforms, the expectations from Nigerians is to feel the impact of the dividends of democracy, especially with the stakes of some of these reforms that are high. As the Tinubu administration celebrates 3 years of the renewed hope journey, we'll put a benchmark on the policies, the progress, and the road ahead. And that's our focus on Platform today. Our guest is a special advisor to the President on Media and Public Communication, Mr. Sunday Dare. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Dare.
Thank you, Ruth, for having me today.
It's our pleasure. And just before we bring in our panelists, we'd like to let you in on his profile. Mr. Sunday Dare was former Minister of Youth and Sports Development. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in International Studies from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and Masters in International Law with a distinction from the University of Jos, Plateau State. Mr. Dare has at different times been an Oxford University United Kingdom Research Fellow, Harvard Nieman Journalism Fellow, and New York University Freedom Forum Fellow. Prior to his appointment as Minister, Sunday Dare served as Executive Commissioner at the Nigerian Communications Commission. That was in 2016. And he had worked in the media. Interestingly, he was also the convener of the Social Media Clinic, a media information technology initiative that has to do with new media, and had previously served as the Chief Hausa Service African Division of the Voice of Nigeria in Washington, D.C. for more than a decade, let's put it that way. Well done, Mr. Dare.
Thank you.
All right, our panelist on the platform is one of our correspondents, Ayo Deji Makinde. Ayo, always nice to have you here on Platform.
Oh, thanks so much, Ruth, for bringing me on a day when Chief Sunday Dare is around.
I understand the connection.
This is a local day.
Yes, I understand. Ayo is a sports correspondent, and you served as Minister of Youth and Sports Development. So let's delve into the issues. PBAT 3, it's been a long time. When we look at the policies, that has been birthed, when we look at reforms that have taken shape. If you want to, paint a narrative for us and how the journey started, we saw different speculations from Nigerians. Reforms come with a price, definitely. But for you, painting a narrative and looking at the trajectory for where this administration is headed, what would be your opening
Thank you so much. I think the narrative is important. And when you talk about trajectory, you must start from what was in place. And when we try to develop that narrative, we interrogate a few questions. First is, what was in place? What was the condition of the Nigerian economy?
Yeah.
What was the condition of the Nigerian state? What were the challenges as at May 2023, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took over? And we take over at that point, saying whoever takes over from another president inherits the liabilities and assets, but then has a responsibility to hunker down with his team and decide and design policies that will confront those challenges and, of course, bring about the development that is desired. So the questions really to interrogate are, where were we when the president took over? What will have happened if he did nothing? And because he did something, what is now the fate of Nigerians. So the mantra really is renewed hope agenda. We started from a renewed hope manifesto, eventually elected, sworn in, becomes the vision, the leitmotif of the administration. And you reeled out the 8 points. And when you start to take them, you see a president who pulled the two most critical levers that needed to be pulled. What is a country worth without the revenue to develop all the various sectors, education, agriculture, science and tech? So he looked at this country is enormously blessed, yet we have massive leakages. Now you see somebody who is adept at governance, who had the political experience over time. Exactly what he did when he took over in Lagos State. He became a political surgeon. And he says, where are the leakages? And then he changed the tax system in Lagos State. He looked at where the loopholes are. We saw revenue, move up from 600 million to, over 2 point something. It's quite high. So he came in and said, the question of fuel subsidy had been the 10-pound gorilla in the room. We've skirted around that issue, removed fuel subsidy. Several presidents have come, and he said, listen, I'm going to do it. And he has said it. In his speech on that day, it was not there. But it's something he had thought about, and he said, fuel subsidy is gone. He pulled that trigger. We've seen unification of the forex market, another subsidized area where people are becoming billionaires. He pulled those 2 triggers. And we have seen what has happened. Let me just fast forward to where we are now. The stabilization of the forex market. So investors, even government can plan better. We've seen our local oil production go up. We've seen Dangote come on stream, and it's been sustained because of the crude Naira for crude policy approved by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Rather than protect the industries, he has decided to support them with government policies, reduce their risk, and government is sharing the risk. So the reserves, the revenue that has been saved, we're dealing with 7.5 billion every year in terms of our subsidy. We've seen those monies go into infrastructure, human development, go into support for our young people when it comes to education. And then when you want to now look at the data that really matter when you do the global benchmarking, you look at our reserves. Is it the gross reserves? It is the net reserves? Is it the surplus in our export? A total reorientation, but also a total diversification. Yeah. Because the last report by MBS a couple of days ago showed that non-oil exports, the revenue is just pouring in. So we're at a point in which 3 years down the road, the president has taken what we want to call the road less traveled, like that very famous novelist, Thomas Hemingway.
Which was not without bombs.
Yes, quite a number of bombs.
Okay.
And I think that we're at the point in which the president stands on solid ground. It's been justified that he took these decisions. Let me make an extrapolation that we might return to at some point. Look at where Senegal is. A young man came to power, a populist regime. He was confronted with similar challenges. Yeah. He chose to ride the populist train. Now, the economy of Senegal has tanked. The PM was fired a couple of days ago. The debt ratio is 135%. We are just slightly below 50%. So when you look at this, you give a lot of credit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for staying the course, for sitting on that hot plate and not running away, for not deferring to populism, but rather insisting that good governance would be the premium for renewed hope agenda programs.
And the question has always been on the minds of Nigerians: why do they have to bear the brunt? Why do they have to make the sacrifices? But let's hear from Ayodeji.
Well, surely, Ruth, that's where I'm just going to take it off, because SD has highlighted so many achievements in the last 36 months. But if you look at the 8 key priority areas, many Nigerians will want to disagree that they are not feeling the direct impact of the promises made by Mr. President. We'll take a look at the removal of fuel subsidy, the rollout of the CNGI program, NEL fund, so many initiatives. But there's still some bottlenecks here and there that are not allowing Nigerians to have the direct impact of these policies by Mr. President. Now, how do you speak to them out there watching us now that these things are gradually, slowly but surely? It is also often said that a leader doesn't take his people where they want to be. It takes them where they ought to be. Please convince Nigerians on these things that we're actually having. And myself and Ruth have to explain most times when we go out there.
Absolutely. I think you do a great job doing that. I think the takeoff point would be that when you desire change, even within a family structure, change brings about adjustment. Change requires sacrifices. So let's take it at that level. And then when you escalate it to that of a country like Nigeria, 240 million people, our challenges are well known. We can't hide them. And then you have a president who says, it's about time we deal with them. It's enough, we've scattered around the problem. So I think the starting point is a mindset. Nigerians must realize that if you require a country that functions, if you want an economy that can deliver, if you want to correct the ills of the past, there must be a dynamic that will come to judgment and take those tough decisions. You look at parallels around the world. There's no country that has advanced that have not had their period of transition, of difficulty, of sacrifices on the part of the followership and also the leadership. And in our case, it's no different. I think we are great. You know, maybe in the first 1 year, most Nigerians were simply saying, oh, no, this is tough. At the 3-year point, we agreed that certain things that were not right before are being righted. And you talk about the macro. The macro figures are fantastic. You talk about the micro. And we can now talk about the micro. I was a young student and I enjoyed bursary at the university.
Yeah.
Bursary stopped almost 25 years ago. A President Bola Ahmed Tinubu comes in with NEL fund. Within 3 months, he signed and NEL fund started. As we speak, 1.3, 1.4 million Nigerian youth are receiving not just the soft loan, but also a stipend of 25,000. That is revolutionary because you're dealing with a target population of 140, 150 million. You're looking at keeping so many of our young people off the streets. And that should be recognized. It was never there. Where did the funds come from? Or where are the funds coming from? Saved from the removal of oil subsidy. And I think that NEL fund thing is a runaway success. But let me make a few connections because people talk about how do you convince the people? What is the micro? The subnationals are critical. When you look at Nigeria's federal structure, the subnationals that the states are critical to, that's where the large swath of our citizens actually live. Yeah. When you look at what those that live in the Federal Capital Territory, vis-a-vis those that live in the states, it's massive. A 60% increase in what they get. So that's an opportunity to develop and to support the people. The question that should be asked is, to what extent are they doing this? But let's even come to the federal level. You look at health, human capital development. As I speak, tomorrow the president will be commissioning virtually over 1,000 health centers that have been revitalized across the length and breadth of this country. As we speak, for the first time, not just the conception, the implementation, 6 cancer centers. 3 of them have been commissioned. Another 3 will soon be commissioned. You talk about macro. This president has given 100% rebate for cesarean births across. Just go get your card and register. For diabetes, almost a 65% slash. Those are the micro because of course you're paying a little more for oil, but the government is also allowing you to keep some money that you'll have expended on certain other things. And I think this builds up over time. Again, when you talk about reforms, you're not talking about 0 to 100. It's a progression. And are we progressing in that direction? Yes. It's like building a house. The superstructure we had as a country was beautiful to behold. But the foundation was rupturing and collapse was imminent. Quantum Economics in there, last month, they came out with a report, very insightful. And they said the Nigerian economy was at the point of collapse when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took over. And they said if those reforms had not come in time and were not as comprehensive as they were, this country's economy will have tanked.
Okay.
And I think that's critical.
So, Mr. Dari, it's good you're breaking down, what this reforms, where these reforms have brought Nigeria to. But also, let's look at the reforms themselves.
Right.
Because if the people are not feeling the impact of these reforms...
But that's the assumption.
Okay, so
Because
I'm getting somewhere. I'm getting
okay.
somewhere.
All right.
Now, you mentioned the NEL fund.
Yeah.
The aspect of expansion to cover more beneficiaries is
Right.
one of the concerns,
Yeah.
especially at the state's level. Then the credit, consumer credit scheme designed to
yes.
democratize
Yes.
Access to
Civil
credit.
servants, yeah.
There is a interest rate of 20 to 30%, which has raised concern. Now, the CNG aspect, which is supposed to cushion the transportation aspect, refueling stations is also a challenge, the shortage of refueling stations. So let's look at ways, these are interventions that are highly commendable.
Right.
But how do you streamline these interventions to ensure that they are sustainable and they, reap the desired
I think
impact?
The key words are sustainability.
Yes.
But also when you have these interventions, the other key word that comes in is scalability.
Okay.
And scalability happens over time. Because it's not possible to have 5,000 refueling stations before you launch the program.
Yeah.
As we speak, I live in Jahi, for instance. In the last 3 weeks, at least 2 major CNG stations have been opened, and I've seen hundreds of vehicles. Across the country, when we traveled to Kano, we saw a massive refueling station in Imo, in Kaduna, in Lagos. So, scalability, the infrastructure for CNG is beginning to gain ground as what is being imported is coming in. And the point is, it's easy to just sit in a place and make assumptions. And I will give you an instance. Just 3 weeks ago, the presidential media team started what we call the Renewed Hope Media Tour. And we went around with about 55 journalists, TV, radio, television, radio, online newspapers, influencers, and the rest. And we went through the Northwest, about 5 states.
Yeah.
And we checked, we saw federal government projects, state projects, impactful. We spoke to people and the rest. Very expository. Now, what you also see is like we're building a road, 100 kilometers road. You can't finish that in 1 year. You can't finish it in 2 years. But you're seeing progression. The question is, are we seeing a progression in terms of the impact? Yes. And that will increase. Don't forget, the first year time is 4 years. In 3 years. And when you just sit back, look at the Jonathan era. In 3 years, what did they achieve? I quickly did that arithmetic before I came here. And I look at the Buhari years, of which I was part of, and I look at what did they achieve in 3 years. Then I looked at the Bola Ahmed Tinubu years. And it's not because I'm there, but it's my work as a public communicator. I deal with facts. I'm dealing with facts and data. You can't correct with that. What the president has been able to do in 3 years is unbelievable. When you combine what the 2 previous presidents did in 3 years, it's even more than that. And you can list them. You can check them out. Now, at the point at which you want to measure, are they fully successful? We are not at the point in which we've even completed the term. So, I do agree scalability is important. You talked about the impact of NEL fund, which is huge. When you move from a 0 student getting support to 1.3 million, again, they are looking at it to say beyond federal universities, can we have state universities? It's a function of the funds available. Also, before you expand these programs, you must also just see how it's working, the impact, and you can expand it. Right now, we have in a row multiple policies and initiatives benefiting the young people, benefiting the ordinary people. You talk about the vulnerable, 9.7 million are benefiting. That's a social safety net that we never had. In America, they also have a welfare system. And the point I keep making, at BOI, you can get single digits loan. Again, if you don't apply yourself to these opportunities, you cannot benefit. We like to talk about America, but if you lose your job in America, they don't call, Uncle Sam does not come to your door to give you an unemployment check. You're going to show up somewhere.
Yep.
You're going to fill, you're going to provide data.
Yep.
They're going to check to make sure that you're actually out of a job and you get something. So our young people should go out and apply for NELFON. You should approach BOI and say, look, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to do this. There's youth credit at the Ministry of Youth. And that's the point. You must apply yourself to these opportunities. Get off, social media and apply yourself to these opportunities, and you can benefit from them.
But talking about these opportunities that you just rightly mentioned, we've seen instances where the bottlenecks there have actually denied so many people the opportunity and even discouraged them. We've seen instances
Talking
where...
about access.
Yeah, access, yes, to most of these opportunities.
There have been instances, and I think there are exceptions, because I've seen where these issues are brought to the fore. And most times through social media. You see the necessary departments or units within government activated quickly to deal with that. Because part of it, governance is a two-way street. There's a leadership and there's a followership. And where I've been on social media and I see, citizen journalists, individuals saying, this is what I experienced. I'll give you a good example. When the new, the airport gate fee was introduced.
Yes.
There was a lot of pain.
Yes.
Who was the one that moved in to change it? The president. Because it got to him that, look, Nigerians were going through pain, travelers were missing there. The president responded. And you have seen, I can point to 7 different instances. When the CBN tax was introduced, there was a lot of hue and cry. The president moved in. He intervenes when it's necessary and when it affects the mass of our people. And that's the kind of leadership, a leadership that is responsive. Just on Sunday, when he gave a speech after the primaries result, he said, if you have lost a little bit of sleep as Nigerians, I have lost a little bit of sleep too. Yeah. You have felt some pain. I've felt your pain too. The challenges are enormous, but we are confronting them day by day. And he urged Nigerians, just a little more while, we will see the light at the end of the tunnel.
SD, the president, most times I said it doesn't really watch social media because it gives him so many issues. But
he gets good briefings.
Good briefings.
Those that watch social media.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Now, SD, let's take a look at 2 key sectors of Nigeria's fabric at the moment, energy and security.
Yeah.
Most times it's all about the president's name keeps coming up without people paying attention to the roles of the subnationals. Now, how do we explain to Nigerians that despite the promises of Mr. President to improve that sector, we're still around the 4,000 megawatts of electricity in the country? And how do we reassure them that the issue of insecurity that is ravaging most parts of the country, that the president is up to it?
Thank you. I think you've touched on 2 very, very, very key issues that have also occupied Mr. President. And I'm going to outline a justification to the fact that it has been on the top drawer, front burner for Mr. President. We have hit not just 4,000. Under this administration, we have hit about 6,200 megawatts. And then when you look at energy, it's a 3-way process. You have the generation. It's not enough to generate 10,000 or 20,000. You have the transmission. And then you have the distribution, which takes you to the last mile. Now, this is a country of about 66 plus years. And over the years, you're supposed to make, every government ought to have made the requisite investment in modernizing the transmission and the distribution lines. And the records are there. What has happened over the years? Total neglect. That's why we have repeated collapse. Now, to change the transmission system of a country like Nigeria, where our lines run length, across forests and other places that are inaccessible, apart from the funding, the logistics, you also need the security surveillance to be able to do that. It's enormous. Now, what has this president done? Beyond increasing generation, because that's where it really starts, 6,000 plus, is an achievement. The question of distribution, transmission, just 2-3 months ago, he set up GAMCO, grid management. Critical. That is really forward thinking, to find a way to make sure that we deal with the problems, the endemic problems that we have. And I think that the partnership with Siemens, because when you look at...
That's been a long time coming, right from the Buhari administration.
Yeah, it took 4 or 5 years before the Buhari administration was able to get that signed. COVID came in, we had a bit of delay. The fact is that the commitments needed to be made, the badges that need to come into the country are already in the country. President Tinubu has The accelerated presidential panel has been on for electricity. And I think the key elements of reform in that sector are in place. Now, I keep saying it just like security. There's no silver bullet. The hard work is you look at what the key problems are, what are the solutions, you apply them, and in time. So we're not yet there. I know that Nigerians, when the band A, band B, and whatever came in, it's also part of the innovation. You look at best practices. And we had people say, I've been having light for 20 hours. Even now, if you pay more, you tend to get more.
But I've not had more. I've had less.
And you pay more?
Yes.
But that's the new experience. Other Nigerians I've read online, they say, look, I enjoy uninterrupted. But again, our transmission line is plagued by this. The earlier we come to terms with this administration has come to terms with the fact that we need to modernize. We need to upgrade our system. What did Egypt do? About 7 years ago, Egypt had a similar problem. Generation was down to less than 2,000. Egypt was in constant blackout. Then Siemens came in and gave them a proposal. Egypt is back at almost 92%. That same proposal was brought here. Now, the faithful implementation of that proposal is what we are on now, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to that.
Okay.
I need to talk about security.
Okay, before we get to security, Mr. Dari, unfortunately, we have to take a break.
Oh, yeah, time flies.
So we'll be back to pick up with that. So you stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned. The conversation is on PBAT 3. We're exploring the policies, the progress, and the road ahead. Mr. Dari, we're going to speak on security, but I want you to pin it to the subnationals, their role in ensuring that they support the federal.
Yeah, I think the issue of security or insecurity has been there for a while. So some people don't want us to say, oh, it was inherited. Just like, but when you say, even the debts we have were inherited from previous government. Some of the challenges were inherited. And the insecurity problem was also inherited. And the issue would be, what has the president done? What is he doing? Again, I talk about the transnational nature of the insecurity we're having. We must not forget where the rain started to beat us. When Boko Haram emerged under President Obasanjo, when the leader Yusuf of Boko Haram was picked up briefly and let go, and then he recruited up until when he took over about 14 or 13 local government areas under the late President Goodluck Jonathan. In this same country, and with all the people that are still talking, some of them were ministers, some of them were governors then. And then we saw Boko Haram become so strong and splinter into ISWAP and Lakurawas. And then you talk about the transnational nature of the insecurity in Nigeria. A borderline with Nigeria that is 1,500 kilometers, completely unpoliced. The number of ungoverned spaces, no authority. So these non-state actors just move in, they move in with their ammunitions, and they operate without let or interest because there's no authority. There are no schools, there are no hospitals, no government presence. So it becomes a no man's land. You look at what happened in Libya, the free arms, small arms that were flowing in. And then you look at the entire swath of the West African sub-region, the borderline, over 3,328 kilometers, unpoliced, no technology, no boots on ground. Now, where is the attraction? Nigeria. And they pour in consistently. And then they find young people who really are easy recruits. So we've seen this problem really grow over time. As the Nigerian state tried to address it, absolutely. But under President Tinubu, we have seen a concentration in the attempt to muzzle and to wipe out these groups. And I talk about how President Bola Ahmed Tinubu turned what would have been a crucial confrontation with the United States to a crucial collaboration. And we're seeing the benefits. People thought, oh, this is it. Nigeria is going to go down. We've seen almost every month American, Airbuses coming in to drop supplies and support. Just a week ago, we saw the second in command that was busted. We saw what happened on Christmas Day. So, are we seeing a progressive effort at fighting insecurity? Absolutely. But again, when you fight insecurity, these are people that have been armed over the decade. They fight back. because it has become so internalized, it has become so lucrative. They're fighting back the Nigerian state, and the Nigerian state is not letting up. We have a president who has increased defense budget. We have a president who has signed on to using technology and drones. It was in Turkey, made a state visit. Just last week, the defense minister went to sign the drones that we need. Just in Kigali, and I was at that meeting when he met with the Airbus. He simply said, my number one interest is to root out the terrorists. Please make sure you supply as quickly as possible the attack Apache helicopters I need to root out the terrorists. It shows you the depth of the problem we're facing. The land space is massive, the forests are thick. These people have been embedded in that place for over a decade. So, and that's the way you fight it.
But what about the role of the state governments? Because most of these insecurity
and I think the president, they have a role, and it's very clear. But I think the president has come in with a solution. And I can remember as far back as 2006-07, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came out clearly to advocate for the introduction of creation of the state police. While interrogating the security challenges of our country, you can Google and check, it came out, it was clear about it. Because when that happens, eventually, it puts squarely on the shoulders of the governors or the subnationals some level of security architecture that they are responsible to. Of course, they are answerable to the federal police. We've seen him, the president, coming in spite of the pressure and the attack. He has been able to even get that to the National Assembly. We've seen the new police IG come in and submit a plan already. And I think that the question about state police is no longer a debate. It's a question of when it will happen, very clearly.
SD, please, let's talk about government sincerity to tackling the cases of corruption that we're having. Recently, the EFCC got in touch, let me use it in quote, to the former Minister of Power. And many Nigerians, when they meet, most of us here keep asking the question, most of these monies have been recouped. What is government doing with it? And for those who are still standing trial, how does government sincerely want to actually tackle this problem of corruption to ensure that corruption, which has been described as the major problem in Nigeria's development stride, is eliminated or reduced to the barest minimum?
Well, first, let me, without doing PR for the EFCC, I think that if just a cursory search to see their record in the last 3 years, because when you talk about corruption, it's also multifaceted. Sometimes we just were fixated on saying it has to be just a minister and a governor. And unless a governor is prosecuted or a minister is prosecuted, under this administration, a minister was just sentenced to 75 years.
Yes.
And within days, he was about running out of the country. He was apprehended. It shows that there's a sincerity and there's a solid effort to fight corruption. When last did we have that happen? That's one. Two, when I talk about the multifaceted nature of corruption, you look at what has given this country the biggest dent in terms of its reputation. I don't want to call it 409, advanced fee fraud. You know how many of these camps have been busted? How many recoveries have been made and monies returned to those they have duped, whether in Nigeria or across other countries? This matters because when you talk about corruption, it has so many slides. And until you attack it from all points, what about within the civil service? We see ongoing efforts. Again, a former minister, several ministers and governors have been pulled up, which we thought was never going to happen. Again, this is a country of the rule of law. Innocent until proven guilty. So when they call you in, and it takes time, the AFCs, the ICPC will wait until they have done their search. Sometimes they wait for 4 years. They must get all the... And then when they call you in, you have a case. Yes, you can be bailed, but your case continues.
What happens to the monies that are collected?
The monies that are collected have been accounted for, that's one. But also know that the first major fund that came into NEL fund, and it was well publicized, came from EFCC. over 50 billion.
Oh, yes.
Presented to say, look, we're putting this back into the system. All those monies will be accounted for. When you look at the fiscal and monetary outlook of this administration, you also look at the recent single window and all of that. Is an architecture to make sure that all funds that are accruable, whether from corruption, from revenue, come into that big pot. And that's where you can now make sure that the challenges of our country are met. And this is an administration that is committed to that.
And we've seen the president, go out to sort for this foreign direct investment through different summits. Now, you can have public-private partnership thrive, talking about investors' confidence, if some of these bottlenecks or hurdles that has been mentioned are not duly addressed. Let's look at a way of creating a fiscal stability, a way of creating a transparent market signal for Nigeria, talking about projecting the image of the country positively so that investors can come in confidently and invest more.
I think that's where you must call President Bola Ahmed Tinubu an A+.
Okay.
From being the president of Nigeria, so he wears a lot of caps. He's also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, but he has added something else to that. He has become the marketer-in-chief. And then you want to add the last one, the reformer-in-chief, because you're looking at reforms spanning 10 sectors. You're looking at a president who he had a choice to just sit at home and make phone calls. It's convenient. Or a president that moves around. Look at the president of India. The massive nature of their economy, the success of that economy. Yet the Indian president is one of the most traveled prime ministers that we have. Because in the global world, in the 21st century world we live in, where we live in a global village, as a president, you must move around to engage with other presidents, to engage with investors in the private sector. Because there's a lot of comfort when private investors who have the resources sit in the same room with the president of a country and they're able to engage and get first-hand promises. When we were in Kigali last week and the president was on 2 different panels, he spoke very well. Somebody with a clear understanding of what the policies were and what the policies were meant to achieve. And when asked on the FDI, whatever, he said, look, as we speak, over $20 billion. FDI has been attracted. We've seen that for every trip, we can sit down and say, and that's what happens. There's an audit each time he returns from a trip. What have we achieved? And how do we advance that? Is it going to Turkey? Is it going to Brazil? Is it even going to the UK? Just the last trip we went, $600 billion from AMP to modernize our ports. And you can just reel it on. So I think that when it comes to marketing the country, the president has made himself the marketer-in-chief. But also you've seen the ministers and the head of agencies also line up in that direction. And that's why we can sit here and talk about the investment climate. That's why we can sit here and talk about what the 2 Bretton Woods institutions have said, the World Bank and the IMF, saying that there's a stable outlook. That's where the ratings move from B, the one that happened last week. That's why we can sit here and talk about just 2 days ago, when our GDP moved up. That's why we can talk about when they looked at the greatest contributor of GDP in Africa after Egypt is Nigeria. These were numbers you could not talk about 3 years ago.
Just before IO comes in, Mr. Dari, I know for you as a media person, a public communicator, it could be easy. Now, we've seen the Minister of Information come out to sell government policies to the people. Right. But having these ministers, the other ministers, do their part effectively, I'm not saying they're not doing their part, but marketing what this administration is doing, some experts have come out to say there are gaps. If you're not selling what you're doing, there will be speculations you talked about.
Absolutely. I think without holding brief for our ministers, I think they are trying. What we just need to do is, again, scalability, more engagement. And of course, sometimes too, you want to wait until what the program you have has reached a critical stage of success, 45, 50%. and then you can speak to it because you have evidence. It has to be evidential.
Yes.
On the part of the federal government, we're out here talking about it because we can stand behind the numbers. There's clear evidence about the data we're having. And when you look at just inflation alone, where were we in 2023? We were at 34 point something percent. And we came down as low as 15%. The president promised that. That does not happen overnight. It's not a wish. It's because some structural changes and adjustment took place. And then you look at efforts at expanding the productive base of our economy. Then that's why we're getting the investment coming in. We're getting different numbers for our GDP going up. We're even seeing the projection by the World Bank and IMF for this economy turning positive. And I agree with you. Of course, there's a concerted effort. With the national media tour we have started, will take us to 6 geopolitical zones. Ministers, governors will join us. We've only done the Northwest. We're going to go to the Southeast, then come back to the Northeast. And it's part of, most of it is road journey. And they can speak to what they have done. And I think that we'll see the scale go up in terms of, exposing what is being done on behalf of this government.
Let me fire 2 quick double barrels because of time. SD.
Do I need to get the bulletproof?
No, you wouldn't need that. You wouldn't need that, SD. You were Minister of Youth and Sports Development. That demography is something that's central to Nigeria's development currently. Surely we're pressed for time. We might not really be able to talk about the digital economy and how youth actually thrive in there.
Right.
But for a particular sector of the economy where you reign supreme for about 4 years, how come consistency has been a problem for some years now? Under your watch, in so many years, Nigeria was able to make the podium finish at the Olympics. We made good statements in different sports events. Wow. But lately, it's not been as smooth or continuity as you expect it to be. Secondly, what do you say to contradictory statements that come sometimes from the Palace of Governance? The president says this, and of course, we're seeing different reactions from different ministries, departments, and agencies contradicting the state or the position of the president to assure Nigerians that we're moving in the right direction.
Let me start from the last one. Unless you come out with specifics, and I'm a rabid consumer of news, I've not really seen where there's been a direct contradiction. Maybe in the mode of explanation, maybe in the breakdown, you might notice a bit of difference. But I think the ultimate goal is not different. The ultimate goal is clear. If the policy is set that we should make sure that our Greek ministry achieves the young farmers, make sure that 1 million of our young people are employed in farming, maybe 1 acre or 2 acres of land. There's a process to that. That is the goal, to achieve it.
What about the budget performance?
Well, I'll come to that.
All right.
So that I don't lose track of. So I've not really seen that direct contradiction. Again, I've explained. It might just be in the way that it's been explained. Now, you talk about the sports. And for me, the bane of sports development in any country is lack of a policy. Just like a country that lacks a development plan. Why are we talking about Lagos today? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came up with 25 years development plan, which has been followed through by 3 or 4 governors. And that's why Lagos, whatever it is, Lagos still is about the 6th largest economy that we have now. So for sports, I think we've had some good times. We've had the Falcons win. We've had the Super Eagles get to
the Tigers
and the rest.
Athletics.
So you notice that sometimes in sports it's not 100%. But then we must return to having policies in sports development. The National Sports Industry Policy was put in place when I was there. There's a 10-year football master plan. Unless we follow documented policies, these fire brigade approaches will not work for us.
Okay, Mr. Sunday Dari, I'm afraid we'll leave the conversation there, but not the advocacy, definitely, because there's a lot to explore. Yes, there's a lot to explore. And me to understand you have a flight to catch, so we'll have to let you go. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this thoughts. Thank you. And congratulations on 3 years.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Ayodeji Makinde, thank you so much for your thoughts on the platform.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
All right, so we've been exploring PBAT at 3, the policies, the progress, and the road we're all headed as Nigerians. And as the president or this administration heads for fourth term and second term, it takes transparency, implementation of these reforms effectively, to promote inclusive governance. And it takes you and I to give that support. And that's Platform. I'm Ruth Aguilera.